Hello and welcome back to the Scenario 7 podcast YouTube channel. My name is Sam and this is week 6 of our F1 fantasy show. In this episode, we'll be looking back at how we did in Miami, talking about price changes and looking ahead to this week's Spanish Grand Prix, going through Matt's team and any alternatives he might look to swap in before the deadline. But before anything else, let's introduce our fantasy expert. It's Mr. Matt Collier. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thank you, Sam. How are you doing?
Yeah, I am well, thanks. First of all, let's look back at Miami and see where we sit in the Scenario 7 podcast fantasy table, starting with Performer of the Week, where we look at the person who got the most points from the last race. In Miami, that was a competitor who goes by the initials SF. Very mysterious person with 293 points after deploying their mega driver. Now to the top of the table, that is still Joe Roberts. He's been there since week 1, and he's still there on 1,163 points, the Scenario 7's very own. Matt, you have dropped, unfortunately, to 23rd. So not the end of the world, but it is a drop on 996 points. Are you happy with this tally?
No, it's been a disaster. I mean, you couldn't write it, could you? I transferred in Pierre Gasly and Lando Norris. What do they do? Both collide with each other, both DNF, and both give me negative points. So it's just kind of summed up my season so far. I'm looking forward to picking my team this week and someone DNFing again. It's just a common trend. But yeah, I'm happy Miami's finished. I don't have to look at that again because it was a disaster when I saw those two DNF.
Yeah, I remember watching the race and seeing this incident happen, and immediately my first thing wasn't, are the drivers okay? The first thing I was like, Matt's fantasy team is in tatters here. The two drivers he swapped in have DNF'd. But we've said this for the last few weeks, at least you're not where I am. So I, despite having getting an all right points total this week, stay in 50th with 821 points. And I did have Verstappen, who got me some good points. My turbo driver, Sainz, got me good points. And I was let down, unfortunately, by the ever-reliable Kevin Magnussen and Fernando Alonso, who both just had really messy races and both finished pretty low down. I'm pretty sure Magnussen DNF'd as well with like a few laps to go, which really wasn't ideal. But let's go more in depth with last week's team from you, Matt. The team you settled with is on screen now. So you had Gasly, who got -1, Norris, who got -2, Magnussen, who got 2, Perez, who got 28, Leclerc, your turbo driver, who got 100, and Red Bull, who got 69. So 196 points in total. Talk me through your selection, and did your gamble pay off? I think the points they got may have answered that for us.
Yeah, it's quite self-explanatory. My first 3 drivers got a combined total of -1 point. It kind of says it all, really. Yeah, it's a good job Red Bull and Ferrari got me some points, so I would have been even further down the order. Yeah, that's how I'd assess it.
Yeah, not a great week. And then, of course, you have Perez, who could have finished higher as well if he didn't have an engine problem with reliability issues plaguing Red Bull this year. Time to look at some price changes. As always, there have been a lot of fluctuations since the last race and will continue to be until the deadline. What we talk about now is the prices at the time of recording. So let's start with the drivers. What driver changes stand out to you?
Yeah, there's been quite a few driver changes, and some have even exceeded by 500,000. The first one is a decrease, and that's George Russell, 24.2 down to 23.9. Despite being only one of two drivers complete every lap, him and Leclerc, for some reason he's dropped in 0.3, which is a bit of a surprise, to be honest, because he's been so consistent in getting points. Another driver that's dropped in price is Daniel Ricciardo, 40 million down to 13.8 million. Just been a bit of a struggle for Ricciardo this season, and that's why he's decreased 0.2. Another decrease is Wanyi Zhou from 8.4 down to 8.3. I think I remember him DNFing in Miami, so he's gone down 0.1. A massive increase is Mr. Red Hair himself, Alex Albon. He's increased from 7.4 to 7.9, so an increase of 0.5. Your man Sergio Perez, 18.2 to 18.5, so an increase of 0.3. And yeah, he's been doing really well this season. And one of the title contenders, Charles Leclerc, 18.9 million to 19.0 million, so an increase of 0.1. Onto the constructors, I've picked out three main changes. The main one being Red Bull, 32.1 million to 32.7 million, so an increase of 0.6. Onto some constructor decreases. Aston Martin, 11 million down to 10.9. It just hasn't been their season. They've been fighting pretty much at the back of the grid, so they've gone down 0.1. And another team that's decreased is Haas, 6.7 down to 6.5, decrease 0.2. And yeah, they definitely had a struggling weekend out in Miami, and that's why they've decreased.
Yeah, some interesting changes and some quite dramatic changes with some teams, as you said, changing 0.5, even 0.6. But let's look at the team you're going to be deploying this week in Spain. Of course, we need to preface this with the fact that it's subject to change, as the deadline is not until Saturday, and practice sessions can be used as an insight into how teams will perform this weekend. And in Spain, a lot of teams are bringing changes. So these practice sessions are going to be crucial, especially for Aston Martin, who have decided to just completely copy the Red Bull's design so they could be rapid this weekend. Anyway, first up in your team is Valtteri Bottas replacing Pierre Gasly in your first of two changes, costing 9.4 million. Why have you bought him in for Gasly?
I think that when he DNF'd in Saudi Arabia, I still should have kept him for longer and stopped chopping and changing. He's always been around that P5, 6, P7, and I'm kind of surprised his price hasn't really increased that much, because he's just completely outperforming his price and where Alfa Romeo should be. So yeah, that's why I've transferred in Bottas.
Yeah, sounds like a solid pick to me. And an even more solid pick is Sergio Perez keeping his place, valued at 18.5 million. Why is he staying?
Yeah, I've kept it in because Red Bull just looked really good, and I've especially kept it in this weekend because he's got a driver boost, so he'll get a plus 10 if he finishes the race in the top 10 this weekend.
So room for even more points for a man who's definitely going to get those points because he's Sergio Perez, the best driver on the grid. Kevin Magnussen, he's still here, priced at 6.1 million. He also remains in your team. Did have a poor race in Miami. Why have you kept faith in him?
Well, my faith with him is getting slimmer and slimmer, to be honest. I saw an article saying that Haas's upgrades are going to arrive not until like the next 2 months, which doesn't look promising at all. And yeah, I just feel like as the season goes on, my value increases. It means that I can look to more expensive drivers, and of course there's practice this weekend as well. So I'll be keeping a close eye to see how all the upgrades have affected the team.
Yeah, the Haas looks like a very track dependent car because Magnussen, for example, has had some great races, but then looked a bit like a fish out of water in Australia or even Miami. So, as you said, it'll be interesting to see how the Haas team faces against the upgraded other teams if their upgrades aren't going to arrive for a potential 2 months, which is quite a big deal. Your second and final change is Carlos Sainz for his former teammate Lando Norris, costing 17.2 million. You're basically going back to a team you had at the start of the year. Why did you make this swap?
Yeah, I kind of just had a punt last week in Miami and realised that it didn't work out. So I brought Sainz back in. Yeah, I still think he's going to get loads of points, but yeah, the moment hasn't exactly been the greatest form. A few DNFs, a few crashes in practice, but I think the potential is definitely there to get podiums week in, week out, and maybe a race wins. That's why I've brought Sainz back in.
Yeah, and he's not the only Ferrari driver you have in your team, as Charles Leclerc is your final driver and your turbo driver, costing 19 million. He came second in Miami. Why did you keep him?
I think he's vital to anyone's team, to be honest, especially for the turbo driver. His price has just constantly been increasing, and with the turbo driver has to be 20 million or less, and he's 19 million at the moment. So yeah, he's definitely going to be staying in my team for a while, getting those points for Ferrari.
Yeah, he is crucial, but he hasn't been in my team all year, which is probably why I'm not doing very well. I think it's a sign. Time for the constructor, and Red Bull stays the team to beat at 32.7 million. Was there any potential for change?
Well, I've been kind of flip-flopping between Ferrari and Red Bull. I kind of did an entire analysis, one of the last ones, as to why I've decided to go with Red Bull over Ferrari. And yeah, the increase in 0.6 kind of shows that a lot of people are transferring Red Bull, and they've also got a qualifying and a race streak this weekend. So plenty of points on the table.
Yeah, so Perez and Red Bull on streaks, so potential for some great points from them. We've gone through your team, but who are some alternatives you are looking to potentially swap in before the deadline, and people at home should potentially consider putting in their teams?
Yeah, so I'll go through 3 alternatives. I'll choose a constructor first, and that is Ferrari, priced at 25.7 million. They currently have a qualifying streak this weekend, so if both their drivers qualify in the top 10, they'll get an extra 5 points. On to some drivers now. And despite his drop in price, I've gone with George Russell, priced at 23.9 million. He's just been Mr. Consistent this season. Hasn't had a DNF, finished in the top 5 in every race, and yeah, that's why you should consider him for your team. Last but not least, Mr. Red Hair himself, Alex Albon, priced at 17.9 million, so he's increased in price. He's outperforming that car, and a lot of luck has been his red hair. Albon's got his red hair. I've got my pink helmet. But Albon's been spraying a few mechanics, and I think even Crofty has got a bit of red hair So that was quite funny. Albon set his own little store up and started spreading red hair. So yeah, Albon's definitely in some great form. So that's why you should consider him for your team.
Yeah, it's great to see Alex Albon back in Formula One, and that red hair seems to be proving the lucky charm, getting him some points. That wraps up our video. I hope you found it helpful. A reminder that the deadline for changes is an hour before qualifying, so get your team finalised by then. Remember to like and subscribe. Follow us on our socials that are linked down below. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.